Have you ever needed to generate a PDF report from inside CRM and then do something else with it in Power Automate? Maybe your reports look just like this, and you configure them through this interface, where you just run it and it comes up with that. Well, how would you do something like that inside of Power Automate? Today, we're going to show you how to do exactly that through child flows that are configurable, reusable, and something you can use for any report. So stay tuned, and you're going to love what you see here. Thanks. Okay, the very first thing that we're going to need to do in order to build this is go to flow.microsoft.com and make sure that we're in the right environment for it. The next thing we're going to need to do is put this into a solution, because in order to use a child flow, you have to have it inside of solutions. We're going to go to solutions and create a brand new solution for this. So we're just going to call this report PDF solution. And then everything that we do is going to be inside of here. We'll select the publisher. Right now, we're just going to do default to make this nice and quick so we can keep everything moving. All right, so once the solution is done, you're going to go into it, and you're going to hit New, and then you're going to go into Cloudflow. So now that you've got your Cloudflow starting, this is going to be done manually triggered, which is how you trigger all of your child flows. So we can just click on that guy here. Now, we're going to need two things because we want this to be reusable. So in order to make it reusable, we need to know the name of the report, and we also need to know something called report XML. So let's go through how we're going to get all of that here. So the first thing we'll do here is we'll put in the report name, and then this is going to be the exact name of the report. So just so that we have everything easy, we're going to do that and put that in there. And then the next one here, we're going to do report XML. Oops. And from here, this is going to be the report viewer. So this is going to be something that we're going to get from the report viewer. And this is a little bit kind of techy on the inside, but it's going to make it so that we can run this report against any report in the system. So the very next thing that we're going to need to do is look up our Dataverse report itself. So they just changed everything, and it's a little bit different. So the thing we're going to do is called list rows here, and that's going to automatically connect to Dataverse. So once that connects, we'll be able to take a look at it. So from here, we'll just type in report, and we're going to actually grab the reports here. And then we need to look up the report by name. So the name comes in here by report name, and we're going to filter this here using an OData query. So for that, we're going to say name equals, and you need to put in single quotes. And we're just going to pull the report name from the manually trigger step here in the beginning. So from here, report name, and then make sure you use your single quotes around it, and we only ever want one row. So that is going to get our report, and I always like to put this in with a rename. So to make it nice and easy, whenever I'm doing a lookup on these things, I just name it with what it's going to be. You guys can set up your own naming standards, but this is usually a best practice. All right, so from here, this is going to return a whole, it's basically an array of things that it's returning. That's okay, because the next step here is going to be getting the actual report viewer. So before we go into the next step, let's walk through what we're actually doing, because in order to make this work, we're scripting the, we're basically doing everything that you do in the web browser inside of Power Automate. So let's look at what that looks like. So first, this is the equivalent to our get row, like the get report that we've done. And so the next thing we're going to do is run this report. So we're going to click on run report, and we're going to click on this guy. And you can see that opens up a new tab. And inside of this tab, it loads up our report. So obviously, no data in here. Don't really care about that, but we can see that we see the report. If you click on Edit Filter, you can see it's got all of this stuff in here. What that report XML is basically a representation of this. So the next step that we need to do is send a request over to Dynamics that will get this report for us. So to do that, what we need to do is actually pull up the developer tools. So from here, we'll pull all this up, and we can take a deeper dive, but I don't want to go through everything. Essentially, the way this thing works is you see if you right click, this is all inside of a frame. So this is actually a iframe that's embedded in here. So we're going to go over to the network tab and we're going to type in report viewer.aspx and we're going to hit reload on this page. It then will just limit this to only the report viewer, which is this internal iframe that actually shows us the report. And so we actually care about this because you see this little save button. We want to actually save this as a PDF. So in order to do that, we need to find out how the browser works with that. So if we click on this little guy and we make it big enough so that we can actually see it, then we will be able to scroll down over here. And on the right side, there's our report XML. So this is our report XML. And if we look at the response here, we actually see the source code for it. And so we've got the source code here. And if we go and make this a little bit bigger, actually, I think what we can do is we can go to the source for it. And this is the exact same thing. So this is the report viewer. See how it's that frame? So what we're looking for in here is actually something called PDF download URL. So do you see this? PDF download URL. And this is the actual URL that we're going to need to send off over to Power Automate in order to get it. It's super ugly. It's really embedded in the side of this thing. And it's not the easiest to find, but you can see that it kind of ends up inside of that JavaScript variable inside there. So now we're going to figure out how to get that guy. So the very first step, we need to load this page. So let's go back to our flow, and we're going to do that. So from here, we're going to do HTTP, and Microsoft, in their infinite wisdom, has created this HTTP with Azure Active Directory, which basically means, hey, we can use this guy and we can send authenticated requests and we can make that connection part of our flow, so we don't have to embed hard code things like the username and password. So this asks for some funny things called base resource URL and Azure Active Directory resource URI. That we can get into a little bit later, but for right now, you just need to know that is your CRM URL. So if we grab your Dynamics URL in full, including the HTTPS, come back in here, drop that in for both the base URL and the Azure Active Directory resource URI, click on sign in, that pops open a new fun little window. And then it will say, go ahead and pick your authentication. And once you do that, now it's all in. So coming back to here, this actually comes over and we've got this thing here. So remember, this comes from a post. So we actually have to send this off to the report viewer page, just like the browser did. So we need to recreate this guy. So first thing first, request method is post. So we're going to pick that from here. And then we need the URI, or the URL for the request, which is nice and handy right here. So we can just copy and paste that guy in, or if you're reading the blog post that accompanies this, you'll have a nice copy paste thing there. And just so you can see, we're going to follow what the browser did, so we're just basically emulating the browser here. We can come back here and we can see what the headers are that we sent over to the thing. So if we look at the request headers, we can see, hey, there's all this stuff here. The one that we do need is this content type. So from here, we can come back and we can say content type. And that's going to be this application x www form URL encoded. So the next thing we need is to actually send off all of the request parameters that we sent to it. And so that is all of these things down here. And we've actually done enough kind of poking and prodding at this so that we know we don't actually have to send everything here. So what we're going to do instead is just add in, we know that we need the ID, and we're going to get this from the report that we have here. So ID is going to be this report. If you just use this page, you would hard code it to whatever the report is there. You can do that, but since you want this to actually work for any report anywhere, we're going to pull it from here. So this is our report that we pulled from the previous step, and we need the actual ID for it. So if we type in report, this gives us a unique identifier. So that's going to be our ID is the unique identifier. You can see, because that returned an array, now this kind of unwraps the array and we're down inside the thing. So the next thing that we need for this is the is custom report. So that's one of the things that it requires. So is custom report equals, and then from here, we can just look that up and we can say custom report, and that's coming from this guy. You saw in there that it had the custom report XML. That doesn't work. You actually have to kind of look this thing up and send that over into the flow, but we'll get into that later. So the next thing that we need is this report name on SRS. And we can get that, again, from the report that we looked up. So if we look up report name, then we'll just say SRS. So it'll see SRS, name on SRS, and we're kind of building out this query string here. And the next thing that we need is the CRM filter. I'm working through this quickly because we're going through the video, but it's all these guys here. So we have ID, unique name. We can leave some of these out. I'm not going to go into the detail. You can poke and prod on your own, but I want to give you a step-by-step on how to do this. So CRM filter, totally required. And that's going to be one of the things that we passed in up here at the top. So that report XML, this guy, when you run this flow, you need to send it this whole string. And that whole string then has to have some things blocked out with whatever this whatever your report requires. So this value here, this would be your account ID. The name here is the name of the account. You probably don't need that. You probably just need the ID. But you have to fill out the XML and kind of generate that out when you run this child flow. We're not doing that now. But what we're going to do is we're going to take this report XML that's passed into the child flow and put it in here. So CRM filter equals, and this is just going to be report XML, which we grab not here, but here from the manual trigger. So make sure you pick the right one. If you pick the other one, it's not going to work for you. All right, so now that we have all of them, oh, I'm sorry. This is actually needs to be a little bit different. So we actually have to pull this in inside of an expression, which, goodness, that looks terrible in this little tiny thing. Oh, how can I make this work? This is going to be encode URI component. I can't demo like this. Let's break the third wall here for a little bit. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to, this needs to be a expression here. So this is going to be in the encoded URI component because we're passing that report XML directly into a URL. We need to encode the thing so that we can work with it in a same format from outside of it. So again, we have our little single quotes, and then from here, this is going to be our report XML that we're grabbing from a manual trigger. So now this encoded version of it is what we have to pass on. So we've got that, and it yells at us for some stupid reason. Because we're double escaping. So so from here, you're going to just put in encode the body as it comes in. So this is coming from the run of the flow. The last thing that we need is report type code, and we're going to grab that from the report itself. So this is going to be report type, and we can just grab you here, and you'll see that these are actually looking pretty similar to what we've got inside our thing here. So we've got ID, we've got is custom report, report name on SRS, report type code, and the CRM filter. The rest of them, it runs fine without it. Don't even worry about them for a second. Okay, so now we've got everything here, and we're actually far enough along that we can test this thing. So let's save it and go back to this and grab this fun little guy here. So we've got our report XML. Remember, that's how we're going to get this, and we also have to know the report name. So this report name is account summary, and we can hit test, and we're going to manually test the guy. So in order to do that, we just run the guy, and then go through this stuff. So remember, report name, account summary, report XML. We're going to copy and paste it directly from this report viewer, the developer tools that we had. So we'll hit run flow, and now that it's running, we'll be able to see the output. So what we're looking for is this is going to look up our report, and then it's going to run this HTTP request. And the output here is CRM report viewer and all the fun stuff here, which is exactly this guy here. So this is just what we're looking for. Look, a CRM report viewer, it matches. It's awesome. So the next thing, remember we have this PDF download URL. You can get this for any of them. So you've got your clicky downy button here, which I have to make it big enough. Clicky downy button. You can then do PDF, all this stuff. You just have to look up the right things. But it's really buried inside this. Can we use Flow to get the data that we want, which is this guy, so that we can get the PDF? And the answer is, heck yeah, we can. So let me show you how you do that. All right, so this is just an example. This just shows you, woohoo, we're on the inside. We got everything we needed. We didn't have to hard code anything. And next, we're going to edit our flow and get everything working again. Now, before we move on, we have to rename this guy because otherwise we're going to get super confused. So this is an HTTP request, and it's a post to basically report viewer. So this is a step that the browser has to take. We have to take all the same steps as the browser in order to get everything to set up so that it thinks that we're actually the browser going through this. So now that we have our report viewer, the very next step that we can do is pull out that PDF download URL. So for this guy, we're actually going to use a compose. We come in, we hit add step, and we're just going to hit compose. And this is going to let us basically transform the data out of here and turn it into something else for us. So we're going to do this as a expression here. So in order to do that, we're going to make this a little bigger, and then, come on back. And we're going to go into the expression. So the first thing that we need to do is figure out where that PDF download thing starts. So if we come back here, we've got PDF download URL. So we know that if we go there, we can say, hey, let's do this add. And what the add does is it basically adds two numbers together. So the first thing that we know is if we find index of, and index of will look for a particular string inside of another string. So from here, the thing that we need to find is the body of this guy. So this HTTP post thing, we're going to look inside the entire body, and we're going to look for our special string, which is this PDF download URL, and we're going to actually find the the parts there. So from here, we've got PDF download URL, and that's exactly this. So the next thing that we need to do is we're looking for the index of that in here, and we're going to add, because the next character that we need for this, and this is not looking right. So that, yes, the next thing that we need is to add however many characters this is long. And the answer is 18. So we're going to find the index here, and we're going to add 18 characters to it. And from there, then we're going to have everything we need so that we know exactly where that next character, which is this little friend right here, that's where we start. And then we're going to take and go all the way in this thing until we get to the end of the string, which is way over here, which we know ends with this. So we're going to look for that, and that's how we'll find out how to pull out this string that we need. All right, so to do that, then we're going to click into the next thing. So we've got our add. Again, keeping everybody happy, we're going to keep this rename PDF download start index. All right, so the next thing we're going to do, compose. So what's this compose for? This compose is going to tell us, well, how long is that URL? Like, how long is the string that we need to get? So in order to find that, what we have to do is find that next string. So we have to come back here, and we have to look for this guy. And then we can then find the difference between the start and the end to find out this exact string that we want right there. So for this guy, what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, subtract. Oops, again, yeah, this needs to be the fancy function expression guy here. So we're going to hit sub, and we're going to put in our happy parentheses, and again, we're going to do indexed of. And from this one, we're going to, again, look at the body. So here, no, not you. And then we've got body. So from the index of the body, we will then look for that last thing. So our friend here, we've got this, and then your comma, and then that, and we're going to say PDF preview. You know what? I like copy and paste. You like copy and paste? Let's get that. Copy, and we'll paste it in. So all that we need to do is kind of find out where this one starts. So we'll just make sure that that's correct. It should be exactly this friend right here, and it is exactly what we've got there. So now we've got everything we need to run the index of that. So that basically says we need to know where that's at, and then here's where the fun math comes in. So we're going to subtract the indexed, or we're going to subtract from that the start. So think about what that does. So what that's doing is it's telling us how long is this string. So now that we know how long the string is, we can then say, we'll rename this guy. So this gets to be renamed to PDF download string length. Okay, so now we know how long that is, and the next thing that we need to do is pull out the substring. So let's do that. So we got another compose, and I'll scroll down so we get this guy on the screen. So from here, this compose is going to be, we've got where it starts, and we've got how long it is. So what we can do is we can do substring. So substring is our friend. What that means is then we can then come in here, look at our body again, and we're going to go to this guy. And so substring takes 3 arguments. And the first one is, well, it's the big long string. And then where does it start? So this one's coming from our PDF download start, so not body, but this is going to be where does it start? Well, we know it starts over here on the PDF download start. So that comes out as a number, so we just throw you in. And then how long is it? So this one comes from not PDF download start, but from our friend, which is the other one, which is PDF download string length. Okay, so now we have a substring with all of that fun stuff, but let's take one close look at it before we move on. And it's got all this funny looking stuff in there. Well, I can tell you from banging my head against the wall, you don't want to bang your head against the wall. These guys need to get converted. So in order to convert them, we're going to wrap our whole substring, which would have worked and give you another problem to solve, but we're going to step ahead of that, and we're going to come in and we're going to say, hey, substring, we're going to replace your output with some other fun stuff. So if we see this U0026, well, that friend gets turned into this guy. And that's not actually magic. It looks like it, but what it is, that's the URL encoding. So if you remember we had to do that before, well, it's already URL encoded. Now we're just going to take and un-URL encode the fun thing. So that's now pulled off, and we have our PDF download string. So that is what this guy is. So we're going to rename you to PDF download URL, and we'll make it in caps because we're really happy by the time we get to this point. Okay, so let's go through. We manually trigger, we grab our report, we post the thing, which gets us this thing. We got our fun long URL here, and now all we've got to do is hit add action. Make this a little bit better for you. All we have to do is hit add action, and we'll do our HTTP with Azure, and boom. And now we're going to do a get. So where does the get go? The get goes here. It just goes to PDF download URL. And that's it. Now we have it. So this is going to be called download PDF. And then all that we need to do, now that we have everything from this, we can simply return to or respond to a child flow. So respond to child flow. And is that going to show up for me? Run a child flow and respond to PowerApp or flow. So all we're going to do here is put the output, and they're going to be report PDF. And so we're returning the PDF in binary format. So in order to do that, we actually have to put the expression in, because when it comes out of this guy, it is in a like a data format. So it's coming out as like we can't really actually use it. We need to encode it. So we're going to use this data URI, and we're going to then put in our dynamic content, which is going to be our PDF download. So this is our download PDF, and that's it. So let me scroll over so you can see this. It's data URI and then the body of the downloaded PDF. And that's it. And then we can just click on save. We got to rename this guy. So this is going to be renamed to the get report as PDF. So before we can go further, oh no, we had a big error. This is terrible. It's trying to respond from inside this crazy unwrapped URL thing. What are we ever going to do? So what we have to do is let's just use a variable. So if you remember, variables are our friends, but we have to start them off first. So we're going to say variable up here, and we actually have to initialize our variable. So this is going to be report PDF data, and we're just going to call this it's just going to be a string at this point. It's you could probably have it be something else, but it's just data. We're going to encode it as a string. You'll have to decode it on the other side, but we'll do that a little bit later. So so that we're friendly to our future selves, we're going to call this initialize report PDF data. And then future us goes, hey, that's great. I know what that means. So now down at the bottom here, this guy actually has to get, we can hack this. We'll add, we'll take this guy and we'll move you onto the arrow there. And you'll notice I just quickly hacked that. You can only drag steps onto arrows. So in order to drag it out to the bottom, you have to add this temporary thing, and then you can just delete it. So from inside this, when we download the PDF, we're going to have to set our variable. So that gets us to kind of escape from this thing, and we'll be able to use that to come out of the flow here. So from here, we're going to say report PDF, that's our variable, and we want to set this to what this guy was. So we're just going to copy you, and from here, we'll just paste. That's our data URI that's coming from our download here. And again, we're just going to rename this guy set report PDF data. And now down on the bottom to our friends on the other side of this, we are going to be putting in the variable. So we can then click save, and while it's saving, let's go through how it works. All right, so manually triggers. This means we can run it as a child flow. And initialize report PDF and all the other fun stuff. So that's just our variable. This gets our report. This posts to this guy, and then we do our magic stuff to get the PDF download URL. Then we run the PDF download URL, and we set the report data, and we respond to everything. So we've saved that, and remember, we already ran a test on this before. So now that we've run our test, we can reuse it. So let's click on test. We'll hit automatically with a recently. We'll hit save and test. And now, while it runs, it worked! Yay! What a great day! All right. I mean, it started. We'll see if it actually worked. It wouldn't be complete without an error. So what happened here? Response is not in a JSON format. The reason is to be determined. Let's pause. Okay, so it turns out we didn't do anything wrong. What happens is it sometimes doesn't run. So yeah, this is a great thing. It's not always happy, but you'll see that inside the report itself. So if we resubmit this, we might get lucky, and we'll see the whole thing run. Haven't changed a thing. This is the right way to do this. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So here you can see it worked. Let's go through this run and you'll see how everything's working and we'll wrap this thing up. We've got all of our fun thing here, this download PDF. You'll see it's coming from the URL that we've passed to it, which is this fun long little guy. When it comes out, it is coming out correctly. So it's coming out as application PDF with the content that we want, and we're setting that data in here. So remember, we did that data URI thing. That's actually converting it here. So when it comes into here, it's putting it out correctly. So it's coming out in the right way. And then if we were running this from the child flow, we would be able to do that here. But because we're not running this, we're running it in test and not from a child flow, it's there. We're done. You got it. Again, remember, you're going to need to have your inputs here. So your account name and your report XML. That is up to you to compose your report XML from your other, from whatever you're using to fire this thing off. So when you do that, you have to do your compose. You'll probably want to make your own parent, parent flows that you then have and embed. So you can then do this from the flow menu here. So you'll probably want to have those flows in here and do those as their own parent things, and then have them just do the compose for the report XML. You can pass in the report name with that as well. That is it. You are good as gold. Everything is working as it is expected. You can get your reports from inside of Power Automate. You are now a pro. All right, have fun, happy crafting, enjoy your day, and have a great time with your flows. Until next time, this is Nick. I'll talk to you later. Bye.